Hello, welcome back to the next installment of Finding Your Way for the NAFC. I'm Lucas Catton. And today I wanted to share a message about releasing resentment. And in a time where many people throughout our country are carrying around feelings of divisiveness, of anger and resentment towards our fellow Americans, toward even our loved ones in many different ways, this seems like a timely topic in order to be able to find some resolution and reconciliation in many different areas. And there's a couple resources that I would recommend that I wanted to share with you about how to go about that. And one of them is from psychiatrist Dr. Judith Orloff and her new book, Emotional Freedom. And in it, she mentions a Stanford research study that shows that forgiveness actually decreases stress, rage, and psychosomatic symptoms. So as we're carrying around these feelings toward other people, it's actually harming us. You may have heard prior analogy of, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, like when we carry around that resentment for people. And so in her book, she actually recommends 3 different things to be able to go about releasing this resentment. And the first one is to set your intention to release it. And that means acknowledging what it is that happened, saying this thing happened, this is how it affected me, and I would like to let go of it. And being able to speak about it and share that these things were real. But at the same time, the next step is to cultivate forgiveness. And when doing so, when you can take a look at maybe what were the circumstances going on in that other person's life when he or she did that thing. Maybe there were situations that we weren't aware of. Maybe this thing that was done to us wasn't at all personal, but yet we took it to be such a personal thing, or that we took it to be so offensive to us, or many different things. But by developing some compassion for that person and a desire to cultivate forgiveness, we can begin to start healing. And the last part she recommends is to take a reality check and go back and say, okay, what's actually going to be the result if I continue to carry out this resentment or continue to harbor these ill feelings toward this other person or this group of people, or you name it. Is it going to continue to harm me? Is there any benefit that's going to come out of it? Or can I go ahead and through these steps allow them to be forgiven for ourselves, not necessarily for them, but really for ourselves, so that we can reduce stress, so that we can reduce these other illness and symptoms that we have, and certainly the anger. There's another great book that I'd recommend that you check out. It's actually called The Book of Forgiving by Nobel Peace Prize winner Archbishop Desmond Tutu from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission down in South Africa. And in it, he actually has a 4-step process that he talks about forgiving. And the first one is admitting and acknowledging the harm that was done. And whether that is the person who may have committed it, whether it's bringing it to his or her attention, and they may or may not be willing to accept it. But if we can accept it and we can say, this is what happened, and acknowledging this did in fact cause harm, or it did have these other repercussions, and start to let go of it that way, because we're digging it out of ourselves and sort of putting it out there, wherever there is, which leads to the next step. And that's talking about it or telling the story of this did happen and telling it to someone who can receive it, whether that's in writing, whether that's a conversation. And that doesn't mean to continue on gossiping about it or tell everybody what he or she did or that kind of thing, but being able to just honestly tell the story. This is in fact what happened. And he uses these examples in some very gruesome real life situations that occurred. And so when many of us may not have such intense things that have happened to us, and maybe they're more emotional, maybe they weren't physical, maybe there are lots of different things that may have been done or that we perceived as being wrongs committed against us. But when we can tell that story, that is part of that reconciliation process. And the next step is asking and granting that forgiveness. And similar to Dr. Orloff's number 2 in cultivating forgiveness is going ahead and doing that. If you have a relationship with a person, approach them and grant them forgiveness, or ask them if they can admit what it is that had happened and be able to begin that healing process. And when they can be granted forgiveness, a change can occur within them as well. And the last step is to renew or release your relationship with that person or that group, and figure out if this is someone who's close to you, you can actually start something new. When all these steps have gone through and you have gotten to the point of forgiving them and you have released the resentment and you are feeling better, then you can actually start to repair this relationship in some way, whether it's a close, intimate relationship or some other loved one or a close friend or, coworker or even a neighbor. These things, we can renew those relationships through these processes. And if not, then you can also finally be able to release that relationship and no longer be under the spell of this thing that happened to you, and letting that have power over you and continue to affect your daily life. So I strongly encourage, once again, to check out these two books, Dr. Judith Orloff, Emotional Freedom, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, The Book of Forgiving, and take a look if there are things in your life where you are carrying around some resentment toward another person or several people or a group of people, and how you can release that for your own benefit so that you can feel better and go on living a better life. I hope that's helpful to some degree. Again, this is Lucas Catton for the NAFC and Finding Your Way. Take care.